Hello everyone, Alistair Gold here. Absolutely no sigh. No need for a sigh. 3 Premier League wins in a row. Probably was a strange 4-1 victory. Not the most convincing at times 4-1 victory. But ultimately Tottenham got the job done. Some scary moments early on. But ultimately pretty professional on the whole at both ends of the pitch. I'm sure there's some little quibbles and things we can say about various aspects of the game, but yeah, ultimately job done, and that's kind of all you can ask for at the end of it. I like going to Portman Road. I do. It's one of those old school stadiums. You kind of go there, you walk around the corner, you see the place, and it just, I don't know about you, but when I go to the City Ground Forest, it just makes me think of Brian Clough. And when I go to Portman Road, it just makes me think of Sir Bobby Robson. And yeah, I love stadiums like that. I do. I love some of the newer stadiums. And of course, the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, it's kind of feels a bit like my baby. I've kind of saw it through its kind of infancy and its construction. Can you have infancy in construction? I don't know. But yeah, but I still retain this kind of affection and love for the old school stadiums as well. And Portman Road is most definitely one of those. And it's had some improvements, certainly in the media area. I've only been there once before, I think it was actually. I think it was for a Spurs under-21s game, I think. Unless I'm just fooling myself and I have actually been there before. Can't remember. But anyway, they made improvements and they've done up a lot of the areas around where the players come in. The media area is all new as well. And one of the aspects to the media area, which includes the press conference room and working rooms and things like that, you have to go up 3 quite big sets of flights of stairs to get up there. And thankfully, in my new marathon trained condition, it's no longer the problem for me anymore. Or certainly temporarily it isn't an issue for me. But I did feel for poor Ange Postecoglou. He came into his press conference after the game, and obviously you're suddenly there and you've got to talk and you've got to answer these questions, and he'd just gone up these 3 big flights of stairs. I'm not just talking like little ones. You're properly going to the top of the building. And after having done all his radio and TV interviews as well, and he was struggling a bit, and he went to answer his first question, and then he kind of stopped and just started laughing, and he just said, 3 flights of stairs, mate. I'm out of condition. Sorry, it's embarrassing. But anyway, and he's quite self-deprecating like that. It's quite funny. And to be honest, probably Kieran McKenna's quite used to it. It's unusual. You don't often get that where you've got to go up in flights of stairs to get to a press conference room. I'm trying to think of anywhere else. I think everyone is pretty much ground floor. Maybe a couple on the first floor, but yeah, it's quite unusual. But yeah, he was a little bit like, whew. But I guess it was kind of fitting because he kind of seen his team huff and puff a little bit and yet come away from what is quite a short trip really to Suffolk with a 3rd Premier League win on the bounce and 9 important points to start motoring up that table really. It was just what the players and Postecoglou needed really. I should also stress, as with some of these have recently been, I'm recording this very late at night. Apologise, I do in advance for any weird stuff I say, any odd tangents I go on. I don't even want to say the time. It's very late, let's put it that way. We're into the next day. It won't be for you because hopefully, or maybe you'll be watching this on Sunday, but it's very much Sunday for me as well. It was not the most convincing 4-1 win in certain aspects, but it was a reminder that Spurs can cut teams apart at will when they play the Postecoglou way. The fast passing, pressing, movement. There's some lovely aspects of the Postecoglou play when they have the players to do it, when they have fresh legs to do it, and when they have the intent and kind of almost remember that's how they get through these teams. Because Spurs are again now the 2nd highest scorers in the Premier League. They've got 53 goals in 26 matches. It is mad. And just getting another 4 goals yesterday It feels like today for me still. But it should restore a bit of the confidence that has probably been beaten down, I think, in recent months. I think the players' confidence just taken a natural hammering, and they've almost had got used to kind of struggling in games and things like that. So to come out with kind of these back-to-back wins after the cup exits and 3, like I say, in a row in the Premier League, it's just restoring a little bit of faith and belief, and at the right time when there's a couple of midweeks off and players coming back, it all feels like it's kind of coming together at this point, and hopefully it's leading somewhere, albeit I know we've lost a chunk of the season to it all. But just to put it into context, those goals, right? Man United have scored 23 fewer goals than Spurs. So Spurs scored 53, Man U have scored 30. It's mad. They've conceded 1 fewer, United, yet despite all of those goals, less than or fewer than Spurs, they're only 3 points behind Spurs. It's just madness, isn't it? It's about key goals at key times for Spurs. That's been the story of their season, really. They still haven't lost by more than a single goal margin to anyone bar Liverpool. That's the only team that's done that. Yet they've got too many defeats, despite all of these goals. And maybe these last 3 Premier League games just show that maybe that's starting to turn again. And they're kind of coming up in the key moments themselves with the goals. It's just obviously a massive shame they couldn't do that in the last couple of cup games. But that's kind of been and gone and done now, unfortunately. This match did not start like it was going to be a nice day at all. The first minute was horrendous. Obviously, again, a theme, the poor starts. Ipswich started the game like a rocket. They were kind of there in front of their... They were there, of course they were there. They had their crowd behind them, and that kind of fueled them to get out there. They're fighting for their Premier League lives. So the crowd know they've got to go for everything. You know, I should stress, Ipswich were applauded off the pitch yesterday at 4-1. It kind of shows you kind of with the crowd and the fans are behind them and what they're trying to do. But yeah, within a minute, Vicario had to palm away a Liam Delap shot. Jadon Philogene followed it up. I think his shot, I can't remember who it hit on the line. I think it was Amari Hutchinson actually. Hit him on the line and that was offside. I think it may have crossed the line after, but it was already offside because it had hit an offside player. Liam Delap, by the way, really like him. He's going to be so good. Obviously, I've seen bits and pieces of him, but actually see him in the flesh. He is a physical player with really good technique. I'd love to think Spurs will go in for him in the summer, and I'm sure many clubs are going to be interested in him. I just get the feeling he's going to have his pick of the bunch, and he'll probably go somewhere where he believes he's going to start every single game. But you can kind of tell Postecoglou likes him as well, the way he spoke about him after the game. And then actually Delap, not long after, kind of flicked on this header from a free kick, and it hits the left-hand post. And won't lie, I was thinking, oh dear, this is all going to go horribly wrong. But I guess it's in moments like that when you need your leaders to step up. And to be absolutely fair, again, it was a day where Sonny stepped up, absolutely, kind of turned the game on its head in that first half. Madders turned up, led the team as well. And I feel like Vicario and Danso, I'm including, we'll talk more about them as we get into this. 2 more leaders for me that stepped up as well. And Benson could to degrees as well. But yeah, they... where are we? 18 minutes in the first goal. Archie Gray pings a beautiful ball over the top into Sonny's path. Sonny leaves, ironically, Ben Godfrey, who Spurs were linked with, absolutely dizzy and on the floor at the end. He just laid on the floor after the goal. Everyone was kind of like, are you okay? Gets past him, knocks the ball low across, and there is the returning Brennan Johnson, his first start in almost 2 months, just under. It was like 4th of January, I think his last Premier League start. There's Brennan Johnson running in to get a toe to it, prod it home. That kind of goal we've seen so many times from Brennan Johnson. 8 minutes later, he gets his 14th goal of the season, Brennan Johnson, against his dad David Johnson played for Ipswich, didn't he, before he went to Forest? And this time it was Bentancur putting Sonny away down the left-hand side. Sonny cuts inside this time rather than getting to the byline. You can see Brennan Johnson is like, hello, hello, at the back post kind of thing. I'm completely free. He wasn't speaking exactly like that. And Sonny just gives him the ball and he knocks it into the net past the goalkeeper with a low shot. To be fair, Ipswich did not give up. They kept going. Helped a little bit by Spurs not clearing their lines properly. And of all people, Jack Clark picks up the ball, former Spurs player, of course, and makes a little bit of a point, I guess, to his old club by picking out Hutchinson, who's in too much space, and he curls a really nice finish, to be fair, inside the right-hand post. And you start to think, especially when they put the ball in the net, Ipswich early in the second half, but it was well offside. It wasn't, it was never going to stand in a million years. I had loads of Ipswich fans on my right-hand side. I was right in the furthest kind of seat in the press box, and they could see, because we've all got monitors at Ipswich, and they were like, is it really offside? As the VAR's checking it, and I was like, honestly, it is so far. It is absolutely, you can't have any qualms about this one. But there was a scare, and it was generally like, oh no, this feels like it's going to swing back round and the Spurs are going to have a bit of a nightmare here. But to be fair, this was the beauty of being able to bring on players that are going to impact a game. And he's able to bring on James Maddison, who'd given a bit of a rest to. And in 77 minutes, Maddison shows some lovely feet to get into the box, sees Spence kind of running inside him, and you look at it, I've watched it again, he barely even looks up, he just can maybe see out the corner of his eye this white shirt, gets the ball into Spence, Spence hits his deflected effort that goes past Alex Palmer and into the goal, 3-1, Spence's first Premier League goal, great stuff. 7 minutes later, it's completely dead and buried, the game. Kevin Danso clears it out of the Spurs box, what's his name, Dane Scarlett gets up, makes another substitute, gets up, makes a really brave header because he gets clattered in the back of the head, heads it on. Kulusevski runs on, takes the ball, cuts inside and hits one of those beautiful Kulusevski curling shots that we haven't probably seen enough of as he's got more and more jaded as the weeks have gone on. Ipswich fans again going absolutely mad at that one because they felt, and maybe it should have been, that the game should have been stopped because their man was down. I think it was Greaves was down with because of the clash of heads. Scarlett kind of got up, holding his head, and was like running on, sensing that maybe could get some kind of goal. It's one of those with, I think, just by the rules of the game, the referee is meant to stop the game. You could argue, if you wanted to kind of drill down to it into a bit, that Scarlett was probably the one that was fouled. Greaves' head goes into the back of his head. So had that been feet against feet, that's a foul, but you can't really play on in those situations. But either way, lovely goal. It happened, and it was 4-1. In what we 85 minutes, was it 84, 85 minutes? It was kind of game over really at that point anyway. But it is worth noting, as I was kind of alluding to earlier, first two goals scored by a player making his first Premier League side in almost 2 months. The two late goals both set up by substitutes. And it just kind of shows you Postecoglou finally being able to rotate and bring on players to impact matches. He's just gone for so long with so few. And now he's finally got options. And lo and behold, it's working. They're winning matches. What have they had? 3 Premier League games, 7 goals scored, and 1 conceded. Just working out in my head. Yes, 2 clean sheets, wasn't it? And just the one today. And then he said about that, he said, we've certainly benefited from having a couple of midweeks off for sure, and that's coincided with getting a few players back. You saw today we were able to rest a couple of players in Pedro and Madders. I can make substitutions, and the players coming on can make a difference. We're certainly in a good space of using these 2 weeks as well as we could to re-energise the team, and I think it is re-energised. We've still got some significant players out. We've got Solanke, Richarlison, Romero, Van der Ven, Ben Davies, he's out today. They're all still to come back. I just feel like we've got a really good opportunity in these next 10 days to be well equipped for what's ahead. What's ahead is obviously Europe, but also an opportunity to address our league position, which is obviously not good enough. So I'm going to start with the defence. Defence. It didn't look good. It did not look good in those opening 15 minutes or so. They were all over the place. They'd switched them round slightly, the centre-backs, or slightly, a lot. That Kevin Danso was on the left and Archie Gray was on the right. This was the first time they'd played together in the Premier League. They played together in the FA Cup tie at Villa, but Danso was on the right and Gray on the left on that occasion, but they switched it for this one. And he was asked about that, Postecoglou, and he said, we just felt Archie is more comfortable on the right. We just felt he could do better on the right and give Kev a go on the left-hand side. We want to see how he goes left-hand side because he may have to play on that side for us during this period. Take from that what you will. He kind of said that again later, which I've got the quote later down here. Kind of almost suggests over the rest of the season he may have to play there. But yeah, I don't know. The way he's talking, he's still talking about Van de Ven Romero kind of hopefully being available around the first leg of the Europa League last 16 tie against RZ. So yeah, hopefully that's nothing too sinister. I don't think it is. But yeah, the switch looked disastrous in the opening stages. Delap, who is a physical player, he kind of targeted Archie Gray, and you could see that. I've seen some people saying, oh, it's ridiculous that he's on that side. Danso should have been on the right. But to be fair, had Gray been on the left, I think Delap would have just wandered over to that side of the pitch and targeted him over there as well. And it looked like it was going to be a mismatch. It was almost like school has begun. But to be fair to Archie Gray, he was taking notes. And as he's done so many times this season, he adapts and learns as a match goes on to new challenges and scenarios and opponents. And yeah, I mean, he's got alongside him Danso, who's a kind of a leader, a talker. You've got Vicario behind him, who's a leader and a talker. And Danso throws himself at everything. Danso is such a battler. And yeah, he kind of tried to make up for whatever kind of areas he felt he should be dominant in to allow Gray to just concentrate on his game. And the other thing I thought was quite good, that not only did Archie Gray start to adjust to the physical battle and kind of relish it and do really well against Delap, but he also started to not use the dark arts, but just use the referee a little bit more in terms of Delap's one who he kind of, how do I put this, makes his presence felt. And Gray was getting fouled. There was little knocks off the ball and things like that. And so Gray started, I think it was 4 fouls on him in all. And he started to say to the referee, like, that's another one. That's another one. How many of these? And he was counting them up and saying them to him, you could see. And I think it got to the stage where Delap was a little bit like, yeah, I'm going to probably have to think twice maybe about this time. Otherwise, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. And I think that helped Gray as well, contain him that little bit more. Gray managed 3 ball recoveries, blocked 1 shot, and he won 4 of his 6 ground duels as he kind of grew more and more into the game. And Postecoglou calls him Arch now. And he said after the game, that's the beauty of Arch. Like I said during the week, we know he's playing out of position. We know we're throwing him challenges. Delap's a handful for anybody in this league. First few minutes, he caused him some problems. But I love that Arch takes on that challenge. He doesn't shy away from it. He doesn't hide. He just keeps going. As I've said, we'll get enormous growth out of him during this period. But right now, he's contributing to us. He's helping us. I thought we had to do some defensive work today. Not a lot, but the defensive work we had to do was important. Against, like I said, a real top striker. I thought he handled it well. A real top striker. And of course, he showed his quality with that lovely diagonal ball over the top to Sonny for the opening goal. And he was asked whether that kind of vindicated his decision to play him on the right of the centre-back pairing. And he said, if you say so, mate, I'll take it. Any decision I make that you think is a positive. Look, I thought Arch, he handled everything thrown at him really well. I just felt today, we kind of knew Delap's a handful. I just felt putting Archie in, he's a right-sided player, putting him on the right side. Kevin's a bit more experienced. I wanted to see how Kevin handled the left-hand side because that's an area where we may need him during this run-in, and I thought both of them handled it well. So Danso was playing on the left yesterday, because Ben Davies was not in the squad. As I said earlier, Postecoglou kind of named him among the injured ones missing, but he toned that down a little bit when I asked him about him because I'd heard in the build-up that there were 2 to 3 players that were kind of struggling a little bit ahead of the game, and I'd heard that Davis was one of them. And lo and behold, he was not in the squad. So I thought, well, I'm going to ask about him, see exactly what's happening, especially as he'd named him among those injured players missing. And he said, just managing his minutes as well. We've got to try to navigate these next 10 days to 2 weeks until the international break to make sure we've got as many players available as possible squad-wise for what's ahead. That's why I left Pedro and Madders out today. I was able to give them a bit of a rest. We didn't want Brennan and Destiny to play more than 60 minutes. All of these kind of decisions at the moment are about trying to get us into a position where we have as many healthy players as possible. And the other aspect about Danso playing on the left is that Romero and Van der Ven are going to have to share game time with him in the rest of this season. They are, even when they return, because he's been a revelation. He's been fantastic. And I love the fact that the fans have taken to him hugely. You could hear kind of Super Kevin Danso being chanted throughout the game. And I've said this before, but in that podcast I listened to, the Rising Baller one, he described himself as a warrior, a gladiator, all these things. And he is. He takes the hits. He really does. There were quite a few times when he genuinely seemed to be really hurt and injured. He would like take a whack to a muscle, or he was holding his groin a few times inside his leg. And there was one point he kind of fell to the floor in pain because he couldn't really move his leg. But then he realised, oh no, nobody's stopping the game for me, and they're coming at us. Ipswich are flying towards us. I need to get up. So he kind of dragged himself back up to his feet, was like hobbling along, trying to instruct everyone where to go as well. And there was similar other moments that happened as well. And it was kind of somewhat reminiscent of the night in Monty Python and the Holy Grail. I can just imagine Danso saying, "'Tis but a scratch. I've had worse. It's just a flesh wound." And then he probably declared that he would, to Liam Delap, "I'll bite your legs off." And I asked Postecoglou about him and the fact that he just kind of took so many whacks. And he said, I think he enjoys the whacks. He's been great for us since he came in. He's really taken to the club, taken to the group of players, taken on the challenge. It's not easy when you're coming into a new club, and we're asking him to come in and almost be a senior member. We've still had 3 teenagers out there starting today and a 4th coming on. It's still a really young team. I think Kevin's been a super addition for us. I think he means Odebear there with the 4th coming on, but technically Odebear turned 20 while he was out injured. He did, Danso, kind of get caught in possession for the Ipswich goal. He looked like he had it under control, and then, just was eased off the ball a little bit easier than he would have been happy with. But he did so much on the day. 6 clearances with his feet, another 4 with his head, 3 ball recoveries, 1 interception, and he won 5 of his 9 duels in the ground and in the air. At the final whistle was quite a nice moment. Vicario kind of ran over to him and just jumped on his back. He was saying something which hopefully seemed very pleasant in his ear. And then when he got up, he kind of pushed him away, almost to say, "You go and clap those fans. They love you," kind of thing. He's just a really bubbly, strong character, Danso, and he's fitted in so well. We kind of often don't know we kind of talk about the talent of players and how well they play, but maybe don't give enough praise when like a scouting setup also identifies the character and personality and type of the player. Danso in that mould has been brilliant, to exactly like Postecoglou said there, to fit into a team as a senior member, despite the fact that this is a big step up for him. And the Premier League was tough for him in his last go at Southampton, but he stepped in as if just a man determined to grab this opportunity with both hands. And I think the young group of players are really benefiting from having him there. But I also think people like Vicario are benefiting from having another leader and organiser there. And I would not bet against Danso in the next 18 months or so becoming part of that leadership group. I really wouldn't. I just got this feeling. He speaks so well. Definitely sounds like Eric Dyer when he talks, with that kind of I have lived in England for a long time, but also abroad kind of accent that you get. Vicario didn't have much to do. It sounds weird to say because it felt like Ipswich did threaten at points, but actually when you really kind of drill down into it, had the early save from Delap, then obviously just couldn't do much about Hutchinson's shot. It was a lovely shot inside the post. Other than that, I remember him kind of just gathering a few comfortable shots, claiming a few crosses that he wasn't really under pressure for. I mean, look, the stats will show that Ipswich had 17 shots, Spurs had 10, but most of the Ipswich shots were just of very little threat at all. There was no kind of contest over who were the more dangerous side in the final third. It was Spurs by a mile. Who else in defence? We talk about the fullbacks. Both the starting fullbacks I felt made their mark. It was good to see Destiny Doggy back and starting. I thought he was really solid. Went on some really good runs. Some of them actually weren't picked out, and it was a shame they weren't because he's made terrific runs. He obviously will invert and come inside. He did some nice runs down the centre, and that kind of gives Sonny the wing to kind of use. And then sometimes Doggy will go on the wing and Sonny will cut inside. They work quite well together in that aspect. It was nice to see them kind of restore or rekindle that partnership. On the other side, Jed Spence, I didn't feel like as a right back he kind of hit the heights that we've seen, albeit he's still remarkably confident right now. He is loving life, and some really nice moments with his feet and dribbling and stuff like that. He was involved in a bit of battle between the club signings, him and Jack Clark. Jack Clark gave a right old kick at one point, which looked very painful. And there was another point when Jed, how do we put this, took a hit in the bad place. And I did feel for him. He looked in a lot of pain. We've all been there. Anyone that's played football has had either a knock or the ball hit the bad place. And, it takes you out of commission for a little while. It really does. I actually felt he looked better, funny enough, when he went to the left, though. And he got a goal, his first Premier League goal, that was absolutely just probably rewards for everything he's been doing in the last few months more than anything. It was quite an interesting press conference on Friday, the day before the game. There was a lot of questions about Jed and to Postecoglou, and he kind of went down this line of saying that, look, I made things kind of deliberately difficult for Jed early on last season. We decided he was going to stay, but I wasn't just going to hand him a spot. This is very much paraphrasing. This is essentially what he said. There was a lot of quotes. So I was not going to just say, "Oh, we love you, Jed. Oh, you're wonderful. Here you go, start." He said he kind of wanted to make it quite difficult in terms of not like on the training pitch or anything. He was very encouraging, and the coaches were encouraging. But when it came to starting, what he claimed, Postecoglou, was that he, wanted to not just hand him starts. He wanted to see how he dealt with the disappointment of not starting and whether it showed that he'd matured from previous years. And to be fair, Matty Wells, his assistant, has been championing Jed Spence since the summer. He really believes he'd be a perfect fit for the system, which we now know he is. But I guess he's had so many kind of missteps over the last couple of years, and it hasn't worked for him under various managers. And there'll have been a reason for that. That's not, you can only have coincidence, twice, but when it's been quite a few times, there's other things behind it, or there was. And was he ready now? And the answer is unequivocally, yes, absolutely. And look, in terms of Postecoglou saying he was testing and all that, I have no doubt he was keeping a very close eye on Spence. And there definitely will be an element of testing him and seeing how he reacts to certain things as well. And like I said, other managers have failed to get something out of Spence or the full amount out of Jed Spence. So there's an element of kind of how do we go about this? How do we unlock what others haven't been able to? I don't know whether the testing was to the extreme of not selecting him in some games when it really would have helped the team and maybe minimise the injury risk to other players. I'm not massively, as someone that still didn't like that Jed wasn't in the Europa League group stages, big league phase, whatever you're going to call it, squad. I kind of still understood it because they need an experienced goalkeeper at that point, and so it kind of proved to be because Vicario got injured. So I kind of got it at the time, even though it looked mad over the course of time because of how versatile he became. But I don't know. I don't know whether it would have been to the extreme, those tests of just not playing him. I think there maybe would have been more to it. But regardless of that, how Spence has got to where he is, he's thriving now. And he's very popular within the squad. Just watch any of the training videos and you'll get a real sense of how everyone acts around him. He's very, very popular. When he scored, they loved it. They absolutely loved it. And that's great. This kind of feels like he's found his place. He's found his home now. That's really good. And look, Postecoglou he should take some credit for it. Matt Wells as well, for getting the best out of him when others couldn't. Even if the wait was frustrating and it's taken us a while to get here, but they deserve some credit. But the main credit has to go to Jed Spence himself. He's worked incredibly hard, really kind of maybe just taken stock of his career and where it was going, what was happening, what he needed to do, and he's listened to what people wanted from him, and he's delivered. He's been terrific. And as we've said before, potentially, maybe, there's England thinking on the horizon if he keeps going in the direction he's going, because he is proving to be a very good left back now as well as a right back. And I've said before, I still believe in the Postecoglou system. Maybe the left back role might suit him a little bit more because he inverts naturally. I don't know. I'm sure once he gets back in the habit of being a right back, I'm sure he'll be very good there as well. But yeah, long may it continue. Moving up the pitch, I think as with Archie Gray, sometimes you have to remind yourself that Lucas Bergvall is just a teenager. It's just, he turned 19 a couple of weeks ago. Yet probably the last couple of months of playing for Spurs have probably added about 3-4 years on him in the football age. He's just getting better and better. That, for me, was up there with one of his best all-round displays. I know he's had kind of big nights where, like, scoring the goal against Liverpool in the first leg of the Carabao Cup semi-final, and there's been other displays where he's been really good. I just felt there was something about his all-round game that ticks so many boxes against Ipswich. He touched the ball 43 times, which isn't a huge amount for a midfielder. It was less than the other midfielders, that's for Spurs, but he was just really efficient with the ball. 85% pass success rate, and it wasn't safe passing. There's quite a few progressive ones in there. Played 3 passes into the final third as well. Recovered the ball 4 times. Made 1 interception, won half of his ground duels. And I think what the stats probably don't even show is just his ease on the ball, his comfort. He's just got this effortless style about him in receiving the ball in tight spots and deciding whether to pass out of it or dribble out of it. And I've said it before, but the fearlessness required for the Postecoglou system, he's got it. It's absolutely within Lucas Bergvall. And there was this one long dribble he did where he just took about 2 or 3 players out of the game for Ipswich. And he then found Kulusevski. Kulusevski teed it up across the box for Johnson. And just as it looked like, here comes the hat-trick. I can't remember who it was, but the Ipswich defender just got a last-gasp block on it. It would have been the goal of the game had it worked. It was such a nice run from Bergvall. Yeah, I mean, look, not to kind of blow my own trumpet because it's not me. It's the people around him who I spoke to, the coaches he'd worked with in Sweden. But it was like a year ago now. It was a week or 2 after he'd put pen to paper on the move from Djurgården to happen then in the summer. And the people around him said, 6 months. Give him 6 months, and 6 months into the season, he'll have adapted, he'll have learned. A bit like a Terminator, kind of reads the situation and knows what to do, assimilates all the information, and lo and behold, here we are, 6 months into the season, and he is just finding his groove. I would say he's probably one of the first names on the team sheet in the midfield right now. He's above Basuma in the pecking order. He's above Sarr, who I think is maybe struggling a little bit kind of physically as well at the moment. And he's more than just an alternative to Maddison. It kind of felt like that was what he was becoming, the alternative to Maddison. And I think that's not the case because Postecoglou can trust all of his game now. He's not a luxury player at all, Bergvall. He's getting physically stronger. He works hard. He gets stuck in. He's very progressive in his play, like I said. And all of that means that he can be used as a 6. He can be used as a double pivot or within a double pivot, as he was yesterday with Kulusevski ahead of him and Bentancur. He can be used as a number 8. And when you've got that versatility and ease at playing all of those roles, you're going to be named in the side. And he passes the ball forward. He gets it. He's taken everything on board Postecoglou wanted of him. Alongside him, I thought Bentancur grew into the game. I thought it was quite sloppy to start with, but he grew into it and hit that lovely pass into Son's path for the second goal. He actually had a big chance himself, Bentancur. He did this really nice, kind of started to run towards the area, and Ipswich for some reason just backed off and off and off, and he was like, we're okay, and he just ran into the box and had this low shot that was saved. His fitness is getting much better as well. You can see that when Spurs had some tough moments, it was Bentancur running out and leading a press to try and get them up the pitch, and he was still doing so at 4-1 in the final minutes in added time. He was up on the left-hand side of the pitch, just chasing down things, and that's huge because I think his style of football, it needs that. And if he's got the physical condition that he can do that, don't forget the serious injuries he's had, the ACL, then the ankle injury that came quite soon after. It's probably taken him a long time to get his base fitness up to the ridiculous levels you need for that midfield role. And there's probably an element right now of both he and Bissouma are probably looking across at Lucas Bergvall and thinking, oh no, because he's going to take our jobs, and kind of look at him like that as well if they don't match his performance. And that's amazing, a 19-year-old pushing on a 3-time Serie A title winner, and someone as experienced as Bissouma as well. And you've got Archie Gray's eventually going to get his chance in midfield. I asked Postecoglou, when are we going to see him in midfield on Friday? And he kind of joked with me. He said, might be never at this rate with the injuries and things like that. But he said, I know there's a clamour to kind of see him there, but he's just getting such an education right now, what he's doing. And it's true, but he's going to be great in midfield. He really is. I'm fascinated to see whether we who's the number 6, or do we see Gray as a Bergvall and Bergvall as a double pivot? And yes, it still makes me think of Ross Geller and the sofa. Pivot! They're going to be an incredible pairing. They really are. Very exciting indeed. Third member of the midfield was Dejan Kulusevski. I still feel Postecoglou was kind of bigging up his kind of freshness after the game. I still feel he looks a little bit battered mentally and kind of physically as well from what's happened to him this season. During that second half, he passed the 3,000 minute mark for this season. I think he said 3,030, something like that. Look, the quality is still there. Of course it is. The goal late on was just beautiful. It was a lovely, and the run that he had to make it shows that his energy reserves are incredible, his stamina. But I still feel like it's not quite the fully sharp version of him, and I just think, I don't know, I wonder whether Maddison wasn't entirely fully fit. It's just me kind of wondering, and whether he, in ordinary circumstances, would have started and Johnson started on the right and Decky would have been the one with Porro to have a rest. Because I asked about that on Friday, because they're both over the 3,000 mark, and I wondered whether those would be the two that would get a rest. And he kind of almost said, leaning towards that was what he was planning. It would be a big call to rest Decky against Man City because he's had so much joy against Man City over recent seasons. He might do, and maybe bring him on late in the game, or in the second half, but that'd be a big call. It really would. He used Kulusevski as an example when he was asked whether the mood had changed with the returning players and the wins. And he said, no, it was never the mood. It's a different feeling because the lads have got energy. They're recovering from games. They've got an opportunity to train. They see they've got support and help in terms of other players. Training has been really good the last 2 weeks. First training sessions we've had for 2.5 months, really. You saw Kulusevski today. People forget he was unbelievable at the start of the year. The poor guy's just been grinding it for 2.5 months without any excuse, without any complaints. He's just been going and going. And you saw today he's got energy. He can run at people. He scored a brilliant goal. For all players, I think it's not so much about the mood. It's about the mental state of having an opportunity now to be able to perform at the levels we want to perform at without the challenges we've had to face over the last 2.5 months. And yeah, like I said, he was able to bring on Maddison, who was booed by the crowd for his Norwich connections. He did a little image photo on social media after the game with Johnson. He was pointing to the canary he's got tattooed on his arm among the many tats he has. And yeah, Maddison comes on, makes an assist and a goal in the 2 games since he's returned. Basuma came on for Bergvall in the last few minutes. Sarr didn't come on. He did this. He kind of was doing a warm-up down the touchline. And when they called for Basuma to come on as the last sub, Sarr kind of ran back with him. And as Sarr reached the dugout, I just thought he looked so stiff and uncomfortable. It was almost like a hobbly kind of limp thing. He just looked really, uncomfortable. So I might try asking about him on Tuesday in the press conference, but I don't know. I just wonder whether it's going to be kind of a bit vague again. And the thing is loads of players always carrying knocks and stuff like that. But right now he's in a position where I guess he doesn't have to play them. And he would have had to just throw Sarr back in. There was one game a couple of weeks back, I can't remember which one it was now, where Sarr came off at half time and he hobbled off the pitch. It was horrible to see. Yet he came out for the second half and played absolutely fine. So yeah, it is a case that he was having to kind of throw him straight back out there. Whereas now it's like, you just recover, mate. You just crack on, get yourself fit and healthy so we can have you back in your kind of best version rather than the compromised version. That's kind of a key thing right now. Moving up the pitch to the attack, the final area of the pitch, I do think people kind of maybe didn't anticipate how important it was to have Brendan Johnson back. He is still only 23. Again, something I think a lot of people forget. But he proved once again that few in that squad anticipate the movement required in the Postecoglou attacking game as well as he does. He's so good at it. He just sensed that Sonny was absolutely terrifying Godfrey. And every time Sonny got the ball, Johnson was off like an absolute shot, ready on the other side in case it comes to him. And it did, twice. 2 goals that were right off the training pitches at Hotspur Way. They were, we've spoken about it so many times. One winger or fullback gets to the side, pulls the ball low back across the 6-yard box, and it's invariably Johnson there at the other side ready to put the ball in the net. And I asked him about those being real training ground goals, and Postecoglou said, yep, Brendan's been really good for us. We don't really have another front third player like him. He just knows when to arrive at the right time. He's really clinical. It's just great to get him back and get him 60 minutes of football. He missed a lot of football. I'm sure he'll feel good after today. He'll certainly feel good from the fact that the 2 goals made it 17 goal involvements now in 34 matches. 14 goals. He's 3 clear as Spurs' top goal scorer this season. He's on target to reach 20 goals for the season. I mean, what they got 12 left of the Premier League season. 2 European games at the least. At the very bare minimum, you've got 14 games there for him to get 6 goals. If he can stay fit, I think he'll do it. I really do. Look, as I said, as a 23-year-old, there's going to be aspects to his game that still need improving. Of course they are. I'd like to see him have more confidence. It's not only his abilities, maybe his hamstrings as well, to burst past opponents like we know he can. He sometimes won't look and beat his man down the flank when we know he's got the ability to do that. But there is no denying he turns up in key moments. He really does. And he's got this great ability to get into areas to score important goals. And that shouldn't be overlooked. There's an argument sometimes, I feel, with certain players that, if they didn't score the goals, they'd offered nothing. And it's like, yeah, but they scored the goals. The goals are important things in football. Goals win games. They're the big things. That's why the strikers cost more money mostly than anyone else, because they do the thing that's the most difficult thing on the pitch. They put the ball into the net. The other one is sometimes people say, it's like, they're all tap-ins. And it's like, but you're ignoring all the movement and the anticipation and what he had to do to get in those positions to do it. If it was that easy and they were that simple goals to score, everyone would be at that level of football scoring goals like that. It's just not how it works. And like I said, he was helped on the day by a fully fresh and ready Sonny. His flying runs and step overs kind of just reminded everyone what he can do when he's not being run into the ground and absolutely knackered. And still able to come off after 74 minutes for Odegaard, wasn't it? Came on for him. And yeah, it's just these little things that change things. Matisse Tell's up front through the centre. Difficult day for him. It was one of those where as a focal point, yeah, he struggled a little bit with the physical battle of it all. Touched the ball just 17 times. I mean, technically, Brennan Johnson, I think, only touched it 26 times. But it's about efficiency and your output from what you get on the ball. And he worked hard, Tell. He did. And again, 19 years old. He still won the ball back 4 times. But he just needs to continue to bulk up and strengthen. I think that will come. He only won one of his duels on the day, ground or air. And look, there's no denying it. Spurs' full attacking kind of potential will be unlocked once Solanke comes back. Richarlison as well, if he can stay fit, but mainly Solanke right now. And I think that will allow Tell to play to his strengths. And where that is across the line, it could be up in a 2 with Solanke or Richarlison. It could be on the right, it could be on the left. And it just creates options and gives him more ability, because he's good at running down the channels. I quite like it when he plays there. He did a nice one where he collected the ball on the right-hand side and drifted right across the pitch, almost to the left flank. He did have a moment where he broke away with Kulusevski, and all it needed was a good pass to Kulusevski. And Tell probably would have got the ball back if he just hit a dreadful pass and it went ahead of Kulusevski and went off. But yeah, it's just a case now for him adapting his bodies to the rigours of English football. The Bundesliga is a powerful, fast-paced league. It's probably the most comparable to the Premier League, but I still think the Premier League is another level above that in terms of the physicality and speed of everything. Wilson Odegaard, as we said, came on, got a bit more game time. That was important. He's a player that Postecoglou really likes. We spoke about him a bit on Friday, and just how much it excites him. His dribbling abilities like no one else in the squad. It was quite a nice moment, actually, I felt, when Kulusevski's goal went in. You know, there might have been a part of Odegaard that was like, I wish that had bounced out to me and I could have scored. But he didn't. When the ball went in, he just kind of clenched his fists and just roared towards the ground. He was so happy and so delighted, and I guess he just feels part of things again, and that's so important for him. He's had so long out, you know, to make a big £30 million move from Burnley. It'd be a big step up, and he's barely played a game in the last 4 months or so. And he's got so much ability as well. And also, it's lovely to see Dane Scarlett made a big contribution against the club that sent him back essentially to Spurs last season because it just wasn't working out for him. They were kind of flying high in the Championship, and there was just no room for him. There was no need for him. So to come back to Portman Road and make a really brave header, like I said, flick the ball on, getting his first Premier League assist in doing so, was a big moment for him. And yeah, I love things you love to see. I think that's been one of the things that's impressed me most about Dane is, we're talking about Matisse Tell there. I think Dane has really upped the physical side of his game. He's much stronger, holds the ball up quite well. And I mean, winning that header was a big thing in itself. He had one little moment where his pace wasn't quite there. He had a chance to break, but he just didn't have the legs to kind of to do it. But but it was all really another little promising kind of moment for him. He's scored his first goal for the club in the Europa League a couple of weeks back now. He's got his first Premier League assist. I think he's got 3 assists in all, but that was his first Premier League assist. Because he was quite famously, but it was quite a big thing when he got his first assist as a 16-year-old, I think it was, in the Europa League. He became the youngest player since Mbappe, I think it was, to get an assist. I set up Carlos Vinicius, I think he did, if my brain was remembering correctly. But yeah, things you love to see. Postecoglou said after the game, we had to work hard today. We knew we'd have to work hard. Ipswich are one of the hardest working teams in the league. At home, they're fighting for every point. I thought they started really well in the opening 10 to 15 minutes with the energy in the stadium, but I thought we did the hard things really well. A couple of times in the first half, we lost a bit of concentration in terms of the second ball and duels. Disappointing goal we conceded, but aside from that, I thought we handled that side of the game really well, which we had to. But I always felt we were a threat when we had the ball. Sonny was unplayable in the first half. It's so good to get Brendan back in those areas where he's always a threat. All 4 of our goals were quality goals. We had to do the hard things, but the fruits of that labour were that our front third play was super exciting and clinical. That may well have been super exciting, but it doesn't matter. I mean, look, the aim now for Spurs, they've got to, in the words of, was it M People? They've got to moving on up. They've got to keep going up the table. Now that's kind of 9 points when maybe others have kind of stuttered and stumbled a little bit. That's been really helpful. They won on that really good run, didn't they, earlier in the season when they won like 9 out of 12 games or something. But they weren't putting them together in the Premier League kind of in a row. This is the first time they've won 3 Premier League games in a row since 2023. Back up to 12th place after a little brief drop because Everton's draw with Man U bumped them up to 12th early in the afternoon. The next gaps, if you're looking at them to try and close up, it's very easy to look at the table, isn't it, and go, 3 more and they're there, 5 more and they're there. Is like kind of just discounts all the opportunities for those other teams to also pick up points, but we love to do it. So in terms of gaps, 4 points to 11th place, Brentford right now. 6 points from a spot in the top half of the table, 9 behind 7th place Villa, who have actually played a game more, and 10 points behind 5th place Bournemouth. I think the key thing now is maybe this kind of feeling that other teams are starting to have their injury problems and feeling a little bit of what Spurs have gone through. Only a teeny bit, but a little bit of it. And maybe Spurs will be in a better position to kind of take advantage of that with fresher players who haven't played so much football. They are also, for those who might have been worried, 16 points above 17th place Ipswich now. So the drop zone is a long way down. And yeah, Postecoglou was asked that tongue-in-cheek, that's that now, you're safe from that, hopefully. And he said, it just goes to show you how ridiculous a notion it was to start with. People saying we're safe with 12 games to go and people actually talking about it, that's the hysteria. And that's all framed around putting pressure on me and the club. I get that. When you're in that position, you've got to accept that. For me, it was always about trying. We had the Villa FA Cup game as a marker for us. We had to get to that space as best we could. We obviously didn't get the outcomes we wanted during that time, but not through a lack of will or effort from the players. That was always my primary concern, to protect them and support them, because they gave everything during that period. Now they've got some help. They've got some rest. Like I said, we're not happy where we are in the league. Obviously, it's unacceptable, but we've got an opportunity to address that. And yes, next up, Wednesday night, Man City come to town. Postecoglou's men have beaten them twice so far this season. If they were to be able to win on Wednesday night, they'd have won 6 games against the 2 Manchester sides this season, which would be mad. City up first tomorrow. They host Liverpool in that big match at the Etihad. Spurs getting the rarity of an extra day off ahead of a midweek match. Guardiola's side have got their injury problems as well. And nothing compared to what Spurs have been dealing with in recent months. But, it all kind of going to play a part. He's going to probably have to mostly play the same side across the 2 games, Guardiola. Whereas Postecoglou will be able to bring in a few fresher faces like Porro and Maddison, maybe Davies, we'll see. It's just now on them taking advantage of other people's struggles and then trying to keep putting points on the board and climbing back up there as well. Interesting little thing that came out this week as well, or it was reiterated this week, is probably the best way to put it, is that Spurs have had to remind broadcasters of a stance, to be fair, they've had for the past 14 years. It's not a new thing, it was just reiterating it, that they want to be called Tottenham Hotspur, or if you're going to use a short form version of the name, Spurs, not Tottenham. They'd prefer to be called Spurs. I'm sure there's some kind of branding, marketing logic to it, which far more intelligent people than me can explain. Spurs isn't the most unique name. Anyone that follows American sports will know that NBA got San Antonio Spurs as well. So it's not a unique name in that respect. It's also true on the flip side that, Aston Villa are not called Aston, even though that's the area. Wolverhampton Wanderers are not called Wolverhampton when they play. But no. How to make strange exhaling noises. For 99% of people, we're all going to continue to call them Tottenham as one of the ways we call them. I'm going to do it. I'm going to continue to do it. I have no interest in not doing it. It's been what I have called them since I was a child. No one is going to tell me that I can't call Tottenham Hotspur Tottenham. Look, it's the area they come from, but so do many other clubs in the league are named after the area they come from as well. Yes, many of them don't, or some of them don't have a second name like. I was going to say, yeah, they do. I was about to say Fulham and Brighton, but Brighton do. Brighton and Hove Albion. I guess no one calls them Hove. But yeah, it's just one of those things. I guess you can choose as a club what you want to be called by broadcasters, but of course they're never going to get the fans to change that. Most of the fan chants about Tottenham, and using their name Tottenham. And let's be honest, nobody in a suit was nudging Daniel Levy at that fans forum, 18 months ago or so, and saying, Daniel, no. And he went, we've got our Tottenham back. It's like, Daniel, could you say Spurs or Tottenham Hotspur? Could you do that again for the camera, please? Because it was totally off-brand. When your own chairman is declaring we've got our Tottenham back, and you're trying to tell people you don't really like to just be called Tottenham. Maybe he meant the local community rather than the football club that has existed within that community for 142 years. It does kind of undo their argument slightly when the main man at the top, I guess, is calling them Tottenham. But look, Ange Postecoglou will be feeling that he's got his Tottenham back now. Sorry, Spurs. As the players return and so the victories, which is nice. It is lovely to be able to do these videos after a win right now. It's we've been on a grind ourselves. The amount of people that I've spoken to over the months, and we kind of commiserate each other. There was one chap I came over to me who had been among the Ipswich fans, but he was a Spurs fan, but his family are Ipswich fans, and kind of we were just briefly talking about just how it's so much nicer to be able to enjoy a victory. And I guess, look, what comes ahead now will show us whether this is a little blip and actually it just is a really depressing season, or whether they've kind of got over and round the corner now, and this is now all leading to what would be lovely, a memorable end to the season. The most challenging of seasons, if it were to end in a memorable way, with a surge up the table, performances to enjoy, maybe something special in that Europa League would be amazing. Someone said, was it a comment? I think it was a comment in the last video or on social media about what would I do how would my video start if it was after Spurs winning a trophy? I don't know. I would probably be crying tears of joy at the start of it. It would be amazing. It's been so long, and it would be a privilege to be able to talk about that in a video. Obviously, we now know how the draw will unfold if Spurs get through the round of 16, where they have AZ Alkmaar away first and then at home. If they do get through, unfortunately, the one downside is, or two downsides, if you want to say, the next two games, the quarterfinal and semi-final, Spurs would be home first and then away, which is not the ideal way of doing it. They would face Eintracht Frankfurt or Ajax in the final. In the quarterfinal, if they could get past AZ. That brings the potential for a lot of fans, like myself. That's the way I'm doing. I'm going to go to Amsterdam and travel from there to Alkmaar. It's probably the easiest way to do it. So for a lot of fans, if Spurs did get through and got Ajax in the next round, it would be a double Amsterdam couple of weeks, really. Amsterdam's very cool. I haven't been there since 2019 and the wonderful night of Lucas Moura's hat-trick. It was a bit grotty weather back then. It didn't show the best of Amsterdam. Amsterdam with all its quirks. And I remember one night a couple of people we were with went into one of those cafes. That was not for me and another reporter. So we headed off. And as we headed off, we were about to go down the street. And I'm looking down the street and I could see two things. one of them was curtains twitching and looked to be ladies behind them. So you know what road I had turned down and thinking, no! Because just to double on that, at the end of the street were a group of Spurs fans. And I just said to the other reporter, we need to turn around, we need to turn around, we need to turn around. Abort. This is not the way we wanted to go. Because I just had these horrible visions of Spurs fans seeing these two reporters inadvertently, I must stress, walking down a street within the red light district, which was not the plan, because it's not really signposted, understandably, I guess. And yeah, we only literally got to the very edge of the start of the street, and it was like, no, I'm going to head the other way. I don't want that to feed back home that gold spotted in dodgy area. But yeah, so don't worry. This time I kind of going to be well aware that always be aware of my surroundings as I'm walking around. So yeah, after that, the side of the draw also contains Bodo Glimt, Olympiakos, Victoria Plzen or Lazio in the semi-finals. So I think it's the better side of the draw. Certainly there's some maybe slightly bigger, tougher teams in the other side of the draw, but ultimately it all means nothing if Spurs can't win the games ahead of them anyway, starting with RZ Alkmaar, which, you know, they played really well against Galatasaray. I watched that, both legs actually, I watched that. And, you know, the Troy Parrott derby, he's doing very well, 17 goals in all competitions for them. And yeah, it's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy at all. You know, it was a tight game at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, 1-0. And I think they've got a really good record at home. I think George Sessions from PA was telling me that they've got a really good record at home. So by no means is it going to be an easy game at all, but they are going to benefit Spurs from having the week before. No game that weekend because I think it's the FA Cup weekend, isn't it? So a free week from the Man City game to that to prepare. Potentially maybe the likes of Romero or Van der Ven back would be great as well. And, you know, maybe, I don't know, would anyone else be back like Solanke or Charles? He originally said that they were a week behind, but I don't know whether that has shifted or not. We'll see. But yeah, just any further cavalry kind of riding in to help would be fantastic. But yeah, there you go. A victory, and some more would be very nice. It really would. It'd be nice to kind of have good stuff to talk about, things to smile about, and things to enjoy. Right, I'm going to head off because it is incredibly late at night. I'm not even going to tell you what the time is because it's ridiculous. But you're always buzzing a little bit more off a victory. I haven't felt as tired in this as I have talking about some of the defeats when I've had to do late night ones. But yes, this will go up in Sunday morning, which is only not too many hours away. And I will be back probably Thursday to talk about Wednesday night's match. Be lovely if that's another positive one. And then, it is the Europa League and whatever excitement hopefully that will bring. Right, time to head off. I really need to go. And as always, stay healthy, stay safe, look after yourselves. I shall catch you later. Goodbye.